is gone. My child is gone. This is grandson is gone. This is gone. They're gone. Now, I have to accept the fact that, yes, they are gone. So I accept the reality. Now, this is a hard thing to do. I have to say goodbye, notice, to the relationship as I knew it. Say goodbye to the relationship, not the person. We believe that you're going to see that person again. I don't care whether that baby was like mine, lost and never knew what it was to breathe. That child we're going to see in heaven. I'll tell you a little story about that too when we look at miscarriages and that. But you've got to realize that you have to say goodbye to the relationship. The lady I told you who wasn't ready for Greek and said that my book stunk, because her, she would call me from time to time, and she'd call me and says, "Well, Doc, I did it again." And I said, "What did you do?" She says, "Well, I told you about where my husband and I used to go shopping together." She said, "I went there, and I sat out in the parking lot, and I'm telling you, Doc, I had everything I could do. I saw a husband and wife walk in that store. I had everything I could do not to run up to them and say, 'You have no right to walk into this store with your husband because I can't walk into that store with my husband.'" I said, "Okay. You know what that means? That means that one of these days you have to go back to that store and you have to say to your husband, 'Honey, we walked into the store together, but I'll never walk into the store with you again.'" Relationship. Little bit by little bit by little bit. Little pieces, and many times, many things over a long period of time. Because this is a process that we don't rush and you go through in your own way. But you have to experience the pain. See, there's pain there from accepting the reality. There's pain from saying goodbye to my losses. There's a lot of pain there. Well, here's the thing you want to do. You want to write about it. Journal. Write about it. Today I felt this. Today I felt that. Write down exactly how you felt about it. And the reason for that is that in years to come, you'll be able to see where you were at that point in your thoughts, and you're going to see how far you've come in your own recovery. And it also is good. It's cathartic because you're writing down what's actually going on inside of you, and you feel like you're pushing it away from you just a little bit. Pray about it. You yourself, pray with spiritual people. Find someone. And talk about it first to interested people, and then write about it, journal, and then cry buckets if you must. And the Scripture tells me that God captures my buckets in the jar, my tears in a jar. Now, how caring is that for what I'm feeling and what I'm going through? And then make a memory box. Forget about people saying, "Okay, when are you going to get rid of all of his clothes?" or something like that. No, don't get rid of all of anything. You're not going to do that. Because those things, one lady says, "You know what I do?" She says, "You're going to laugh." And I says, "Well, what do you do?" She says, "I kept his old flannel shirt, and it still smells just like him." And she says, "I'll go to that closet, and I'll pull that shirt out, and I'll smell it just because it reminds me of him." There's nothing wrong with it. Most people tell me, and nobody knows this, that they talk to that person after the person is gone. Yes, I've talked to him. I just talked to him. They might be at the gravesite, it might be at night, and that's okay. You talk to him. That's all right. See, there's a lot of myths that are out there that just make it harder on people to recover. Now, reason with me. Life is an eternal journey. I like what Paul says. Paul says in Philippians 1:23, he says, "I'm hard-pressed between the two, having a desire to depart and to be with Christ, which is far better." Now, the word depart is a word which means, literally, let go of the mooring. You have a ship tied up, and it has a rope hanging from it, and that rope is tying it to the dock so it doesn't go off. Paul is saying, unhook my rope. And Paul, later on, he would say, in Timothy, he would say, the time of my departure is at hand. Time for me to let go of the rope and go. Why? Well, because this is only part of the scene of life. We've received Christ. We're eternal creatures. Life is not over when you and I say goodbye to this life. Jesus said, "Listen, if you'll give me these 70 years, I'll give you something that you'll love a whole lot better. Now, our loved ones, or those who died even prematurely, have let go of the mooring and are on their way. Now, there's two scenes. On this side, we're crying and we're sad and we're saying goodbye, 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 we miss you and everything like that. But the moment that they pass into that other world or they depart, there's a whole other scene. Oh, here she comes. Oh, yeah, hi. And and all that whole thing that we don't understand or can't get a picture of. Or I used to tell my congregations that if you ever knew what it was really going to be like, we'd be holding our services out in the middle of Route 80 hoping that we'd all get run over. You know what I mean? It's a good thing. It's a good thing to leave this life and go to the next thing. Not for us who are here. And if I said, hey, I got a bus leaving tonight and we're all going to heaven, how many want to go? How many would raise your hands? And some of you would, and some of you are just kidding because around 10 o'clock I get a phone call saying, maybe I'll take the next one. Maybe I'll There's a natural holding on to this life, but there's also a natural fallacy that we have thinking that this is better than there. It's not. It's better there. That's why Paul says, absent from the body which is to be present in the Lord, and that's far better. It's a whole lot better. You'll just have to take my word for it. But you see, what I'm looking at as I'm dealing with myself and as I'm trying to get through my grief is the fact that my loved one, whether to me, our little unborn child, well, I'll tell that. I was going to save it for talking about miscarriages. But about 2 years ago, in the summer, God came to me and said, Bill, you have a child here with me, and you never gave her a name. That little baby that you brought. You never gave her a name. We weren't Christians. She's born in a common grave. And Plainfield, New Jersey, we never knew that. And I went to my wife and I said, honey, I says, what name were we going to call her? And she said, Bonnie. Now, we actually called our first daughter Bonnie, right? And I said to Melba, I says, well, honey, now we have a Bonnie number 1 and a Bonnie number 2. And I felt so bad because I never had the wisdom to realize that little one has life. And that little one had life for 8 months and gave us life and joy for 8 months. But now she's in the presence of God, and I'm going to see her again. Now, wouldn't it be embarrassing for me to go into heaven and someone say, hi, Dad, and I'll see, whoops, well, do I know you? Well, it would be just, if you know me, something dumb like that would happen to me. But I take comfort in the fact that was life. And we'll talk a little bit more about that when we have a very short session on miscarriages. Understand what death really is. Now, you see my wife's wearing a dragonfly. And our dragonfly has a name, Jason. Because Jason was our grandson that got killed by a hit-and-run driver. Drunk driver. Yeah, drunk driver. And at that time, for some reason, eagles and dragonflies became the theme. And we came across a story about dragonflies. These little dragonflies nymphs were down at the bottom of a pool of water. And they're talking. One of them says, you know something funny happens here? Every once in a while, one of us gets an urge, wherever we get it from, and we go and we climb up the stem of the lily pad, and then go out on that lily pad, and we never hear from them again. What's that all about? What's happening with that? Well, they said, let's make a deal. The next one of us that gets an urge to go out and climb up and get on the top of that lily pad, come down and tell us what's going on inside of you, okay? Let's make a deal. And I don't know how many hands they have to shake, but they shook hands. And sure enough, one day, Jason went over to the lily pad, just felt this impulse upon him, climbed up that lily pad, went out on the lily pad, and he was so filled with new things and new feelings, the sun, the fresh air, and all that stuff that was up there. He wasn't even thinking about those guys who were wondering what's going on. And pretty soon his body actually started to dry out and become a shell. And then all of a sudden he started feeling like he was pushing life out through that dry shell, and